Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where today we're going to continue to dive deep into the Circle G. Just as soon as we come back from this musical interlude.
In the hush of a Vegas night, he called a close, no stage, no line. Slipped a ring on both her hands, no crowd to cheer, no wedding band, just love, just breath, just time grown old, a vow unspoken, sealed in gold. Two hearts caught in 24K, in peace, in quiet display. No diamonds loud, no eagles cry, just tenderness that doesn't lie. Worn near her skin, where stories hold a whisper of him, sealed in gold. My love, to give, but something whole, the myth, the memory, sealed in gold. No velvet throne, no final show, just gravel roads where true love goes. He gave her life, he gave her soul, and left behind a heart to hold. He loved my life, he wrote it in chain, a promise forged through joy and pain, not just to give, something old, the myth and memory, sealed in gold, sealed in gold, sealed in gold.
Welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, and today we continue our deep dive into the Circle G. Now, if you were with us for the last couple of episodes, you know that Elvis has bought the ranch. He paid more than $400,000 for it at the time that he bought it. Alan Fortas told us the story, and he talked about the time that he and Priscilla and Elvis were all driving in a convertible, and they drove past this beautiful piece of land with this giant 50-foot cross. And Elvis said he'd driven past it many times before on his motorcycle, so he was aware of this property. And Alan had seen a for sale sign. So Elvis told him to turn around and go back, and they figured out who owned the place, and they eventually bought it. But today, we're going to actually start over with the story. because we've got a new voice coming out of the archive. And that's the guy that you see on the screen right now. That's Jerry Schilling. So you can see Elvis, you can see Jerry. This is probably like 1965, 1966 that this picture is taken. The ranch is 1967, so they look pretty much just like this while they're at the ranch. And thank you to everybody that's joined for this episode. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the support that you guys give me. And so let's get on with this story and see, how did Jerry Schilling remember it? Well, he says that at about 2 or 3 a.m. on a morning in February 1967, Elvis and 4 other people left Graceland in a double cab pickup truck to purchase a Tennessee walking horse for Vernon Presley. So Elvis wanted to buy a horse for his dad, and they were driving a double cab pickup truck. That's the type of pickup truck that we saw in a previous episode. So if you missed those previous episodes, I encourage you to head back and pull those out of the archive and watch them for yourself after we get done with this one. But they all drove over there in that double cab truck, and in that double cab were 5 people: 32-year-old Elvis Presley, Priscilla, 25-year-old Jerry Schilling, Jerry's girlfriend Sandy, and Alan Fortas was driving the truck. So according to Jerry, it wasn't a convertible, it was a truck. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you guys. Hi, Keith. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you too. So according to Jerry, it's a double cab truck, and Alan Fortas is actually driving it. And yet Alan remembers it in a far different way. He remembers it in a convertible, something like a chariot. But what Jerry says is, quote, "We're driving back to Graceland, and it's dawn, and Elvis sees this beautiful white cross overlooking this lake. Elvis told Alan to pull over." Mystical. I think that was the first impression Elvis had of the ranch. So Elvis saw the cross in Jerry's story, just like he saw it in Alan's. So that part stays true. And they pull over. So that part stays true as well. The moment Elvis sees the property, as both men remember it, he began actively seeking to own this property. And Jerry says, quote, "I know it was mystical to him because this was a time when Elvis was doing a lot of spiritual reading." And Jerry explains why he was doing the spiritual reading. And it's that, quote, "He was unhappy with his movie career at the time, and he was very much searching for what his purpose in life was, and why he had this fame, and what he should do with that." So what we see here is 2 men that remember this same event very differently, and yet, for the really important parts, for the emotional truth, they remember it the same, which is exactly what I've been telling you in previous episodes about people are good for emotional truth. That's who you go to. But you don't go to them for facts, because they're terrible at facts. And here we see another example of that. It's very possible one of these is very accurate, and one of these accounts is obviously not accurate. Or it's possible neither one is accurate. But what they remember is Elvis saw the cross, it meant something to him, and he needed to own that property. And Jerry's assigned reasons to that. And Alan had some different reasons, but again, they were mostly the same, that Elvis was tired. He was tired of dealing with Hollywood and that he needed to get that break. So this divergence between Al and Jerry, it's not contradiction, it's mythic multiplicity. Elvis's arrival at the ranch is a ritual moment, and it's refracted differently within each of their minds. For each witness that was there, they probably remember it slightly differently. But the important part is, Elvis saw something. Most people agree it was the cross, and he had to have the property. Let's see if I've got any pictures to go with this story. I believe that I do. And here we see Jerry and Elvis. And here we're at the meditation garden. And this is before Circle G. And you can see Elvis and Priscilla and Jerry and his girlfriend, Sandy. So that's the Sandy from the story that was in the white, or I don't know that it was white, but a pickup truck, a double cab pickup truck. And they all drove past the Circle G together, along with Alan Fortis. And Elvis saw the cross and said, "We've got to stop." That's Sandy. She also rode horses with Priscilla. She's kind of how the whole horse thing started. Priscilla got a horse, Elvis bought her a horse, and then he needed to get one for Sandy to ride with her. And then that eventually led to him getting one. And of course, he needed one for Jerry to ride with him. And he ended up getting, we heard in earlier episode 17, may have been as many as 20 horses on the ranch, according to Jerry. Or 20 horses at Graceland before they moved to the ranch, according to Jerry. And Keith's saying, did Alan not pass the test with EP because he wasn't around too much after that? So Alan was actually super important because he was in the 1968 Singer television special, what we know today as the Comeback Special. He's in the maroon suit and he's sitting right next to Elvis when they do the part in the round, when there's the four guys in the maroon suits, one of them being Charlie, one of them being DJ Fontana, one of them being Scotty Moore, one of them being Alan. And Alan doesn't do anything musical. Elvis had him up there just because he was his friend. So I don't know exactly what happened to Alan, to tell you the truth. But I believe he phased out to work on his personal life, like with his marriage, which he's referred to in an earlier episode that we saw. So I think that's what's happened to Alan. Now, eventually, we'll trace out what happens to Alan throughout one of my series, but in Circle G, he's still around when it ends, and he's still very important to Elvis. And Debbie's saying that she's never known anyone that was as generous as Elvis. And Adrian saying he can't wait to see the new epic Elvis in concert. Yeah, it's all over the internet right now. It's a very hot topic. So I'm hoping that it meets everybody's expectations when it comes out, and it's a lot of footage that we haven't seen before. All right, now here we see a picture of Elvis, and he's smiling, and this is March of 1967. So the events where he bought the ranch are the very tail end of February, and he's had to leave the ranch to take care of business. And I believe in this picture, there's actually something connected to a dental appointment. Like he had some kind of dentistry that he had to have done. I don't know exactly what. And he was very happy afterwards, and this is the picture. But this is that time frame. This is what he looks like during this period. And because this is the contracts series, signed, sealed, remembered, we got to get something that Elvis has filled out or that has some kind of documentation about what's going on right now. And while while he owns this ranch in the middle of the dream, he's doing a lot of other stuff. And this is dated May 1st, 1967, that you see on the screen. This is the information for marriage license that he filled out in order to marry Priscilla. So this says Elvis Aaron Presley. And what's very interesting here is he spelled Aaron with one A. So I have reason to believe that he preferred to spell it with two A's, yet for some reason, when he filled this card out, he filled it with one A. The consensus appears to be that this is his handwriting, and this does resemble his handwriting, but maybe it's somebody else's handwriting, and they filled it in, and they filled in the one A with the Aaron. It'd be really interesting to know, but there's no actual signature, and that's why nobody really knows who filled it in. They think it was Elvis. But you can see he says he's 32 years old. His date of birth is January 8th, 1935. He resides in Memphis, Tennessee at 3764 Highway 51. So that's before it was Elvis Presley Boulevard. The county of Shelby in the state of Tennessee. Previously married, no. And he's just put a line through everything else, including deceased wife, divorced, when, where, and on what ground. And we've got another one of these marriage license information tickets. And this one is in a much neater handwriting. And it's filled out for Priscilla. And it does appear to be in Priscilla's handwriting, which would indicate that Elvis did fill out the other form and only put one A for his middle name, Aaron. But she's got the same date, May 1st, 1967. 21 years old. She was born May 24th, 1945, the year World War II ended. She resides in the city of Memphis, and this is the very interesting part about this form. It says her address is 1266 Dolan. Well, that's Vernon's address. He lives over on Dolan Road and has the access cut into the fence or a gate so that he can come through over into the Graceland property. But that's what Priscilla's listing as her address here. County Shelby, State Tennessee, previously married, no, and she's got lines for everything else. And this is a much harder to read form, but it's the affidavit of application for the marriage license. And here Elvis actually has signed along with Priscilla. Somebody else has typed in all the information. Aaron is again spelled with a single A. Someday we'll come back and look at this form in a lot more detail. It doesn't really fit into the Circle G story other than they got married during this period of time, and we're about to talk about what they did on their honeymoon. So I wanted to get a few documents in here. And here's another one. This is the actual marriage certificate. This was filed a few days later. So it was, I think, May 5th. Yeah, it's down at the bottom. It says May 5th, 1967. And again, you see Aaron with a single A. And all the other information is mostly the same. This is signed with mutual consent in the presence of Joe Esposito and Marty Lacker. And the man who married them was named Justice David Zinoff. Justice, Supreme Court of Nevada. So he was a pretty important guy. And here we see a picture of Anne Margaret, and she's getting married. And this is just a few days after Elvis's marriage license is filed. It's just 3 days later. So I think we're all aware that there was a connection between Anne Margaret and Elvis. And a lot of people think that if things had been slightly different, they would have gotten married. And yet they both got married at almost the identical time. So we've talked about reasons that Elvis might have wanted to purchase this ranch and to get away from things. And what was he trying to get away from? Well, one of them might have been the memory of Anne Margaret, as much as celebrating his new marriage. And we know that right before, less than a month before he bought the ranch, his Uncle Pat, who was Delta Big's husband, Delta was Vernon's sister. Delta, Elvis brought her to Graceland to live for the rest of her life because Uncle Pat passed away. And Elvis really loved Uncle Pat. And so that was yet another one of his family members gone at the very beginning of the year. And then he purchases this ranch. And then a lot of people believe that he was coerced into marrying Priscilla. So that's all happening at this time. He's got to film that movie Clambake that he's not very happy about. And his former love, Anne Margaret, is getting married. So I think there's a lot on Elvis's shoulders at this moment that he's thinking about. And Jerry Schilling has some things to say about it. And here we go. Quote, "Just before we began our horse buying spree, Elvis had been sent the script for his next film, Clambake, which had every indication of being his lousiest production yet. I know it just bothered the hell out of him. His music was being messed with. His once promising film career had been turned into a joke, and he didn't see any way out. The idea of turning the ranch into a refuge for himself had to be appealing." One of the first things that Elvis did was he built a 10-foot high privacy fence all the way around the property. So he was walling off spectacle to cultivate intimacy, simplicity, and perhaps even sacred domesticity, because he was getting married and he was wanting to start a family. And we know from an earlier article we read where Elvis was interviewed, he said that he wanted to live to be old, to have a woman that he could love and grow old with, and that they would have children, and he would know that he lived a good life. And that is the dream. That's part of what he's trying to pull out of Circle G right here. And so he walls it off with his 10-foot fence to keep it private. And Jerry Schilling says, "Elvis knew how to make people happy, and he wanted to make people happy. He appreciated so much his success, and that's why it was so important to him. The career was not being as special as it should be, such as Clambake." So this Clambake thing, according to those that were around him, was really bothering Elvis. And Linda's saying, "Great documents, Matt." Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. Keith's saying that Clambake was a dreadful movie. Some people like it. I think it's kind of fun. But Elvis was in a terrible mood while he was making it. That's definitely true. And it's not the highlight of his career. And it must have been very difficult for him to have to face that every day. Basically, he was grinding out a paycheck. But he'd known a lot of people that had grinded out paychecks, so I think he finally realized he had to do it. But as we talked about yesterday, he got Dr. Nick to help him get some days off, days that he really needed to take off. And Linda's saying that Ann's marriage was lovely and lasting, so that's great, unlike Elvis and Priscilla's. That's true. That's very true. And Ann is asking, was Ann done with her career when she got married? I don't think so. I don't think she was as active later, but she did a lot of stuff in the 70s. Like a lot of stuff. But I think more of it was like on television. Like a lot of variety show kind of things. Not positive. That's something that we should probably look into. So 6 weeks before Elvis and Priscilla got married, and 6 weeks before Anne Margaret and her husband got married, Jerry married Sandy. So his girlfriend Sandy that we just saw, they got married about the same time Elvis did. A little bit before, but during this period of the ranch, that's when Jerry gets married. He'd met Sandy in Hawaii because Elvis had taken him to Hawaii. Now, after Elvis's wedding, the newly wedded couples, Elvis and Priscilla, and Jerry and Sandy, they celebrated together. Jerry said, "We did a trip to the Bahamas, but I would say the honeymoon for Elvis and Priscilla, and also for Sandy and I, was really the ranch. He was in that little house with Priscilla, and it was the first time in her relationship with Elvis that she and Elvis lived in a place by themselves. Granted, in this walled-off ranch, but in Hollywood and in Graceland, everybody's in the house, and everybody's living there." So we had seen earlier in an earlier episode that Priscilla, according to Alan, had been the one that recommended the ranch in the first place to Elvis and put it into his mind. And that she was seeing it as a getaway where just the two of them could be alone. And Jerry is echoing that he perceived the same thing, that Priscilla saw the ranch as a place where she could be alone with Elvis. But she wasn't alone. There was a lot of other people there. So they stayed for a little while in the cottage, and we heard a story yesterday about how Elvis played a special song for his Uncle Earl, while Earl could hear him through the window of the cottage, and he played it just for him. But Elvis didn't like the cottage because he had bought 8 trailer homes that he was housing everyone else in. And those trailers were brand new. And they had the brand new stuff in them. All the newest conveniences, things to make life easier. Nothing was broken. There weren't any repairs to be made all the time like there were at Graceland. And even in the hotels, the fancy hotels that he stayed in. These were established places. They had history. And they had age. This place was brand new. Elvis was looking as he walked around these trailers and realizing no one else had ever lived inside these trailers. So he bought one for himself. He purchased a 60-foot, 2-bedroom mobile home manufactured by Delta. And that's not Aunt Delta, that's Delta, the home manufacturer, for himself and Priscilla. He was ecstatic. But the demands of the career forced him away from the ranch. This house, eventually, the one that we see on screen, this is the one that he bought for himself with the red shutters. And it eventually moved to Graceland. And this is the house that Earl and Nash and Donna Pritchett, who we now know as Donna Presley, this is where they lived on the Graceland property. Eventually, this house left Graceland, and it got auctioned off, and it eventually got refurbished, like redone and auctioned again. So It's out there in the world somewhere. Somebody owns it. And whoever that is that owns it, they've got the 1967 notarized bill of sale with Elvis's signature and some other paperwork from the purchase of this trailer. So that's not a document I can show you, but it is a document that's referenced. Signed, sealed, remembered. His 1967 notarized bill of sale, which supports that the trailer in this picture is the trailer that he bought. And Priscilla said about this trailer, it turned out to be very romantic. I loved playing house. I personally washed all his clothes, along with the towels and sheets, and took pride in ironing his shirts and rolling up his socks the way my mother had taught me. Here was an opportunity to take care of him myself. No maids or housekeepers to pamper us. So I find all kinds of stuff within this quote, but what strikes me most is that these are things that Priscilla doesn't normally do. Other people are doing this for Priscilla and have been for a while. And so these are not chores that Priscilla is used to doing. And she's actually finding joy in doing the chores, but I'm sure that didn't last forever. Even if they could have stayed on the ranch forever, I'm sure eventually she would have gotten tired of that. And Linda's saying probably the only time they spent together, and pity she cheated not long after. Right. But the history's all there. And Linda says it looks beautiful and luxurious for a mobile home, especially for the time period. And Debbie's echoed that yes, especially for those days. So yeah, and I've actually got some more pictures for us to look at of this. So those of you that have stuck it out this far, this is where the reward comes. Because we're going to actually get to go inside this trailer. Now, the red shutters and such are gone. But here it is on the inside. After they had refurbished it. And this is like the living room where you would come in. Then you can see the kitchen. You can see down the length of the trailer. You can see how tiny that little stove is there. That would have been the stove that Priscilla was making Elvis's breakfast on. And now this is from the living room, and you can see they have that partition wall that has the cutout of the two windows, and I'm assuming that was original at the time, and that was a very popular thing to do in the late 60s, early 70s. And I think that blank space there is where you, with the, it looks like brick, which is probably some kind of wallpaper. That's probably where you'd put your washer and dryer. We can just get a little bit better look at that in the cabinets. So you even get to see inside the cabinets on this tour. And that's the sink where Priscilla would have washed his dishes with her own two hands. And Anna says, I wonder what it would have been like if he fired the colonel at that time and got rid of all the moochers and lived a simpler life, but yet entertained some of what his life with Priscilla would have been like. And we'll never know, because he chose to head on back. And then he did the 68 comeback special. And then he went back to the live performances. So maybe he got the recharge that he needed from the Circle G. And Pat says, wow, it's beautiful. And Linda agrees, and so does Regina. And here we get to see that tiny little stove a little bit better. Debbie says, I'd love to have that even now. It's fairly spacious on the inside. And it's got a decent floor plan. And Linda is laughing about washing dishes as well as ironing. A lot of pictures of the kitchen here. And I think that the sink is a yellow, which was a really popular color in the, as I remember, in the 70s, but maybe in the late 60s. It was more lime greens in the 70s. So yeah, I think the yellows were more of a 60s thing. And Linda's saying better than her house. Here we got the countertop where Elvis probably stood and ate, and maybe they played games with some of the other guys who showed up. Maybe they played some card games or checkers or something there, because he was trying to live that simpler life. I know that in the 70s, they all loved backgammon. I don't know when that started. Maybe it was as far back as the Circle G. And Adrian is saying the yellow looks like gold. So I don't think it's gold, because we're going to see some that look a lot more like gold coming up. Hang on. And Pat's asking who decorated it. Well, I don't know who picked out all the interior and everything. I'm assuming that's Elvis. But there are some domestic touches that we're going to take a look at. And so we're almost there. Keith is saying he wish we had some pics with Elvis and Jerry in the trailer. Yeah, there's almost no pictures of Circle G according to what I've read. Now, I would assume there's some out there in the hands, perhaps still, of people who were on the Circle G, because there was some home movies taken there. So apparently some people were taking pictures of home movies, but there's just not much that's come out. Here you get to look into his cabinets and wonder, what did they keep up there? What did the plates and glasses look like at the Circle G? Were they as fancy as those at Graceland, or did they go for something a lot simpler? And here we've got some drawers. And Keith is saying that Billy and Joe went there too. That's right. And we're going to confirm that in a minute. As soon as we get out of this trailer. And you can see they got a closet in the hallway there. It's probably where you'd hang your coats. And so we saw that thick coat that Elvis was wearing, and the hat. He probably had it stored in this closet, because after the snowstorm in March, the freak snowstorm, probably wasn't a lot of call to wear it. And here's where you'd hook up probably, that might be the washing machine or the water heater or something like that. Here's one of the bedrooms. Not much to see here, really. It'd be amazing to know what the actual furnishings look like. Linda's saying it reminds her of her childhood with the color scheme. So I remember this color scheme because I grew up in the 70s, but older of my relatives still had their 60s styles going on within their house. Because, of course, redecorating is always expensive. And Pat's saying it's a shame they can't fix it up the way Elvis had it. We don't even know where this trailer is, to tell you the truth. Somebody personally owns it. But it'd be nice if it made it back out to the Circle G, right? And then maybe completed that circle. If they're really going to get something going with the Circle G. Just another picture of that same room, but looking back out. We're just looking outside. And here is where is the bathroom. And you can see this sink in this bathroom is very, very gold. So it's possible that that sink out in the kitchen is the same color that we see here in this picture. And it just doesn't come out very well in those other pictures. Or it's this other yellow. And I just don't know, to tell you the truth. But this is very clearly some kind of gold color. And obviously has the gold fixtures. And Marion's saying that maybe Elvis felt a little bit like being in his childhood again. I think so, Marion, but this time with money. You know, this time he didn't have to use an outhouse. He had a gold fixtured bathroom. And Anna's saying maybe he stored green bottles of water up there. Yeah, that's a good guess, actually. Those green bottles of spring water. I don't know when that started either. I feel like that was in the 70s that he started doing that, but maybe as far back as this. And Linda's saying she was born in 1970 and had those colors in the mid 70s here in the UK. Yeah. And Pat's saying that she wishes that we could repair this Circle G. Here's another picture of that sink. So I have a lot of these pictures to go through of this trailer, but we're never really going to have another chance to go through them together, so I figured we'd look at them all. You can see we're even getting a shot underneath the sink in the bathroom. And of the throne. Looks like they could have done a few more repairs. Now the bathtub, also gold. The other really interesting thing about this bathtub is where the spigot and the controls are. Like, I don't know about Europe, but in the United States, that is a very weird place to have the faucet. It's always behind. But this makes so much more sense because it's probably much easier to sit in the tub now. And you can get your back to either side. You can. So, I don't know. I think maybe I like that better. But I don't see where the shower head is in this picture. And Adrian saying he wonders if that is solid gold. The fixtures, I don't think so. On the sink, I think they just look gold. And I believe it's ceramic painted gold for both the tub and the sink. I don't know that for sure though. And Anna's saying that when she grew up, they had a weird color of green. Yeah. I remember the greens and the yellows. And I think they grew out of the flower power culture in the very late 60s. And Linda's saying these are great pictures. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. So here's just one of the rooms. There's another one of the rooms, same room really, but you can see into the closet and see that's where the electrical box is. So this is probably the master bedroom. It's probably a terrible place to have the electrical box because anytime you need to get to it, all your clothes are going to be in front of it. And I hate to have fabric like hanging against that thing. That would just drive me crazy and make me think that the house is going to catch on fire. Pat's saying that she loves it. Thank you so much, Pat. I appreciate that. Oh, Debbie's nailed the color avocado. That was the green. Avocado. Back in the 70s. This is just another picture of the master bedroom. Just kind of small for, especially for Elvis. And here is something I thought, especially the ladies would really like. These are the drapes that Priscilla picked out. And I don't know if she picked these out for the cottage or for the trailer. I kind of think for the trailer, because obviously it didn't come with curtains, so it would have needed curtains. And I don't think she would have wanted to transfer the ones from the cottage. So these are a rose and gold pattern. And Jerry Schilling, he remembers the other people who lived in the other 8 trailers. So I'm going to read them out for you. Who else was living on the Circle G? Well, in one trailer, it was Jerry Schilling and his now wife, Sandy, completing their honeymoon. In trailer number 2, and of course, I'm just assigning these numbers randomly. There were no numbers to the trailers or anything like that. They were all bought at the same time. And then I don't know how Elvis divvied them up, but in one of them was Alan Fortas. And of course, his new wife. And then one of them was Billy and Joe Smith, another married couple. So you might see a pattern here. Elvis is now married, and he knew he was going to be getting married. And he kind of set everything up at the Circle G so that all of those those married couples they'd all be together in this little village on the Circle G, part of his honeymoon. And in one of the trailers, number 4, Larry and Stevie Geller. And that was Larry's wife's name, Stevie. He was married to her until about 1972. And in the 5th trailer, Joe and Joni Esposito. So Joni, a lot of fans might remember her. Eventually, Joe and Joni will break up. Just like Steve and Larry, and just like Sandy and Jerry, and just like Priscilla and Elvis. And I'm not sure about Alan, but I think maybe him too. So they all spent some magical time together here, all as couples, and then later in life they were all split apart. Everybody but Billy and Joe, who are still together. Number 6, in the 6th trailer, was Richard Davis. I don't think Richard was married at this time. I don't think Richard married until like 20 years after Elvis had passed away, something like that. I think that was his first marriage, but I don't know for sure. Richard is somewhat of a mysterious character. Although, like the first generation of Elvis fans after he passed away, those that were there in the late 70s and early 80s, they knew a lot more about Richard. And it's just all kind of disappeared. In the 7th trailer, we know, were Earl, Nash, and Donna Pritchett. So those were really his only family members that were living out there. And in the 8th trailer, Jerry doesn't remember the 8th trailer. He doesn't remember the 7th or the 8th trailer, but we know that one of them was Earl, Nash, and Donna. And Jerry does know that there were some other people that were spending a lot of time at the ranch. And that's probably the 8th trailer, because they would come and go. And one of them was Red West, and one was Marty Lacker, and one was Mike Keaton. And Mike Keaton is one of the rarer names of the Memphis Mafia. So if you've done a lot of reading, you might have run across Mike every once in a while, but he's another guy that almost never speaks from the archive. And And Adrian's saying that it's nice to see this. Thank you for all you show us. Thank you for being here to watch it, Adrian. It only means something because people are here to witness it and they want to see it and they want to learn something. And this is a great time for me to say that I don't have any special knowledge about Elvis. I don't have any qualifications to talk about him. Anybody can talk here that wants to. I have my opinions, but you guys are also welcome to yours. What is happening here is we're getting all the way down to the source material, like these drapes that we see on the screen. The drapes aren't a document, but they do tell a story. And it's a story right from the time. We weren't there, but these drapes were. You know, and we were putting together a lot of stuff like this and the documents. And then we all get to make our own decisions. And we're not trapped into the narratives that we've already seen put out there by other people, even the ones that were there. You know, their opinion and their perspective is their opinion and their perspective. And it probably bears more weight than any of ours, but it's still an opinion and a perspective. So feel free to put in comments, put in chats, definitely mash that like button. If you haven't heard one of my newest songs, Mash It Like the King, it's out there on the channel right now, so give it a listen after this broadcast. But mash that like button and make sure you've hit that subscribe. Turn your notifications on so that you get notified every time I come live. But I try to go live every day, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you don't know when that is, it's right now. 24 hours from now, I'll be back on the air right here. But let's move forward with this story just a little bit more. These trailers that Elvis gave to everyone, you know, they're more than just trailers or houses. They're like all his gifts. They have purpose. He loved these trailers because they were modern, they were efficient, and they were communal. Because they were egalitarian. They made everybody equal. Suddenly, Elvis wasn't on top, although he did have the best trailer. He was a little bit better. In a tribe, he would be like the chief, and he had the chief's tent, or chief's hut, or the lodge, the building where most of the business was done and the people gathered. That would have been Elvis's trailer. Had to be a little bit bigger. He was the chief. But everybody's equal here. And this was a dream that he had. It's fresh, it's unburdened. He wasn't carrying around all this stuff that he carried around in Hollywood. He did, if he was forced to go through with a marriage, he was here, but he was making the best of it, trying to do this right, like a honeymoon, and start his family the right way. And his Delta mobile home, it becomes that kind of mythic hearth because it would have been like that chief's teepee. People would have gathered there. The whole tribe would have gathered there. All of Elvis's people. And he would have also visited their homes because he loved these trailers. And these drapes are just an example of the domesticity and the cozy love that Elvis was looking for. The simplicity, the friendship, the shared memories, the simple life. That's what he was trying to find here at Circle G. And Jerry Schilling says, it wasn't about Elvis the star. It was about sharing friendships on a more realistic, simple, loving basis. Being off the road, being away from Hollywood, just getting down to the bare essentials. And that's actually where we're going to end the story for today. But we've still got so much more to go because we haven't got to the end of the Circle G story yet. And we're going to come back and we're going to hear more from Priscilla. We're going to hear more from Donna. We're going to hear more from Alan. We're going to hear more from Jerry. And we're going to bring in yet more voices. We're going to bring in George Klein. We're going to bring in Dr. Nick, because we know Dr. Nick was there. We know George was there. We have a list of other people who were here. Joe Esposito. We know that Marty Lacker was showing up from time to time. We're going to try to get as many of those voices in here as we can so that we know what happened. At least as close as we possibly can. And then everyone gets to make their own decisions. But before I let you guys go, I'm going to play another song as we go out. And I just say to you all now, like I do every broadcast, until I see you guys again, you keep on taking care of business.
The lights came down on Vegas gold. July heat, a crown retold. Applause like thunder, stars align. But one true friend was not in line. A telegram, a quiet grace. From 12 years deep, a loyal face. I read your words, they calmed the flame. In all that noise, I spoke your name. I wish you could have been here, Gary. The velvet night, the roaring crowd. But in my heart, your voice was steady. A whisper soft, a faith unbowed. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the haze to Graceland's porch where silence sings and friendship wears no stage or wings. The suits, the gifts, the famous hands, they cheered the king, they made demands. But in the mirror doubt would stare, and only you knew what was there. I wrote you lines in trembling ink, not for the press, not for the drink, just for the man who saw me hold beyond the glitter, past the road. Say hello to everyone, I'll be home when this is done. The curtain falls, the echo fades, but you remain my serenade. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the hay to Graceland's porch where silence sings. Friendship wears no stage or wing.